Good, how you doing?
Good.
Hi there, Dwayne.
Ryan, how are you doing, man?
Good.
Well, it's gonna be an awesome meeting, right?
Awesome, yeah, there will be, awesome.
In one way or another.
Yep.
That.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you got it.
Sorry.
Oh, look cute.
I've always liked quotes.
I was like, if those bad, I was like, no. You guys must my little folder, and I've got like 5.
Yeah.
So I'm like, here's a bunch of pens, so you always have them.
Yeah, I don't
Right, 'cause I
like
don't have any on my desk, because you're always elsewhere.
Yeah, not getting
You're right. I need to.
You want,
It's crazy
you want,
because
you want that?
I would always have on the
Benefits
pencil
of being
for
an adult.
instruction, and I have a pencil, the pencil is good for.
That's great, good.
But then now with the phone, I just, anytime.
So that thing that happened with the, where
So
they
why-
crashed, the meeting was.
Yeah.
The marker,
Read
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I didn't think that last time.
There's like 6 people on there.
Seems like forever, when we get a little break,
First started.
or just an
I remember
extra
what we
week or
call it,
something, it
these
seems like
guys
it's
just-
forever since we had a
We were like,
It
oh,
was nice. It was
Yeah.
and then we're like, oh, wait, we're
That's
doing
what
like,
I'm
so they
saying.
call it long or
Yeah,
something.
I think everybody needed it too.
And we'll make up for it with the
I'm
line.
sorry.
Bad people out there.
Yeah,
But the
right.
longer ones, sometimes it seems like we
Oh, well.
get through them a little quicker, maybe. Or it seems like we kind of
The
keep us on
goal
track.
is just to
Yeah, keep us on track.
keep focus.
Did you smell that when you went down?
Uh-oh.
In back.
Yeah.
Hey, dear. I'm not sure she can hear.
Hey, dear, hi, dear.
It was, an interesting day.
Can you hear us?
Did you get what you needed?
Oh, yeah, from you guys, yeah.
She's not reacting like.
Hi, Deanne.
It's just, they're brisk.
It's not snowing though, and it's not windy.
Yet.
Can't say the wind or W, it's not doing the W.
It's the four-letter W word.
Yes.
Yes. At least when you're skiing, you can't say it.
Yeah, I learned many years ago, never ever send them your words like.
No, don't know. As soon as you do, it's like,
Take your ass, take your.
my teenager was like, let's just say, we're trying to say it wet. And they never heard from them. It's like, there's no sideways, there's something going on.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And a curtain.
Saturday, I knocked off 3 candies.
Oh, you did? Tell me about that.
How many hours did it take? 11.5 hours total time for the double crossing.
Thank you.
I made it from North Room to South Room in 4:45. That was my goal, you guys are there. And then chill out, like, you gotta get it in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're there, you're just trying to go fast, you know? So I'm there and then.
Hey, Deanne, can you hear us?
I could have, I started right as the sun came out and I could have beat it, but that last rope didn't overlook. I'm like, no one wants the sun down here. So that cost me about 20 minutes, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm under.
Hi, I know worth it.
Yeah.
I don't think I know you.
So-
Maybe, I think it's Oh, nice to meet you.
I know your name, but I didn't know your face, Jennifer.
Oh, I think, I definitely know
Yeah.
you.
Okay, okay, well, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, whatever. The recording is.
Yeah, John, how are you?
Other than that, I'm good. I'm hanging in there.
Good, good. That's what we do.
Damn, where? Who's this from? Oh, Craig. For years I've done, races that, this group called the Bible Sports puts on in their Bay Area. Some outfit and they do runs and swims in the fair. Angel Island. Something, Angel Island is great. Yeah, so I do that, but they, one that is very local out. So get everyone together in the beginning, there's the God bless the ground or something, everybody.
Yes, I just noticed.
So I just think there's some great places to catch a view. And so, you know, you can stop and take it, and just track your time, those are called environment minutes.
We got that posted.
Okay.
So it's at the, I just posted at the hotel
Finish time when you get back.
window.
Relax.
Because I'm gonna be gone next
Kind of
week,
bleeding
Nice.
so I
this
just,
day,
Somewhere warm and balmy.
but,
well, not really going, but California, it's the northern now. But we're gonna check out some colleges.
Ever a time, you go.
So,
Fair enough.
Okay.
You know how that
Yeah,
is.
I'll see her tomorrow. I'll get those.
Yeah.
40, 50, 60 miles. It's worth it. It actually.
Can you hear us now,
it
Leon?
stops for a few seconds.
Right, short version.
You know, it's amazing how quick you make that up versus
yeah,
trying.
just trying to just power through.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
That one,
Hey, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Cool,
Yes,
thanks.
well, that's my feeling.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah, that's nothing compared to.
So this is amazing.
Lots of work sessions.
I like that.
Yes, exactly. That's a good language. Why should I say that?
The problem with skiing yet?
No. Hopefully this week.
So I don't. It says something.
I'm glad they got a chance.
Probably no Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it? Okay.
Yeah. There's, I think that's like, one is the same one. It's just one run, yeah.
It's just a
But they got a
bit,
bar,
you know, we love
Since
this
we-
one.
How are you?
It's.
I thought we were gonna get to see the-
Really small. So I mean, I can skip. Yeah, so I mean.
The
it's-
novel.
Yeah, that would be, that's a good one. You'll see it soon. Especially for skin out. It's a nice track, just, you know.
Yes, and I'm topping it over.
I was there, we went road, Sunmark Road, I went to this. Was awesome. I can't ride that, but 95% of it with my one guys that works this way. And, he's the youngest, you know, you could ride, I'm like, oh, man, I just did, you know, but it's, we did prove, yeah, it's 100 runs on my bike, you know, so. I want to get driving. I've had a year, right? It was like, prostate cancer, just like, you know, I'm trying to, since I haven't been able to get sexual, you know, pretty much,
They got me bell ringing for years because I said yes. Once.
Thanks so much for your You know what, I think I left your stuff downstairs. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're here. Mary's going to grab your packet.
So luckily we have neighbors that.
No, now they were. Not after the rain.
I don't know.
I never.
So now we have to stay here for.
Sometimes I can get around without the cane. Sometimes I can get around without the
I
cane,
think he likes to stay better.
so.
They're just getting more places.
Good. I'm doing like half a mile around the block, trying not to bend.
I try yesterday, so it's not going anywhere. It's Ted, right?
It's a little dicey for a while.
They had one couple from 7.5 years old that was just like.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. What's that? Pretty darn good. I still use the cane a little bit, but thank you, man.
This is just an amended, action item.
All right. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't get over and get this. I just looked at the agenda and said,
It's okay. I was waiting to see if you were gonna come get it, and then I forgot.
no worries.
Yeah, that's the amended, for big.
Somebody's already started. It didn't get well.
Did you come to the Chase?
This is where I might just bring out that. Chart and then, I just feel like.
I noticed that I got a little bit.
Super, yeah.
Excuse me, did you guys happen to bring your draft 2 of your budget? Because I don't have a new one, so I'm gonna go down. No? Okay, I'll go down and make copies. Well, no, I'll make copies. I'm all for that. No? We have to make decisions on a few things, but why don't I go down and make you all copies? How's that?
Well, what about just on the stuff we need to make decisions on?
Well, we have to do all of water and wastewater and then decisions on some stuff that we've already
On the
looked at.
planning, the promotions commission stuff?
Yeah, that,
That, whatever that.
Yeah.
That stuff.
so I will go do that. Yeah, well, I'll go down. Yeah, come on down. No, I'm gonna wait till after payables and then I'll go down and do it. No, I'm sorry.
Blood pressure.
I show 6 o'clock, so I'm listening to show on the road. It is November.
I'll be able to try my own.
So
shoes.
you got it left or right?
2023.
Okay, good, so I don't have to look at that.
You can slap me around.
It is Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. It is 6 PM, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Georgetown to order. Let's go ahead and start with the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next is roll call. I am Lynette Kelsey, police judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Deanne Howell.
Here,
John Jennings.
Here.
White Buzinski.
Here.
Mary Smith. Here. And Rich Barrow.
Here.
Agenda approval. Does anybody have anything they need to add to the agenda? Let's hope not. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda dated November 14, 2023, 6 P M.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Do you think we have anybody?
We have one person, it's Craig Abrahamson. I don't know if he wants to speak. If you do, Craig, can you type into the chat, please?
Anybody in the room want to speak for audience business? Minutes.
Just watching.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on. First off, we have the payables. These are dated October 6th, 2023. No, that can't be the right date. October 20th, 2023, through November 9th, 2023. Any questions, comments on the payables?
I'll make a motion to approve the payables dated October 20th, 2023 to November 9th, 2023. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the minutes of our last meeting, which was Tuesday, that's another, okay. That was October 24th, 2023.
I have a correction.
Yes, Dan?
Top of page 2,
You're muted again.
at the top of page 2, it says that John was the one who abstained from voting, but it was me, not him.
Correct. Okay. Any others?
Your question regarding on page,
6.
yeah, the last page. You were right that it is, I was gonna change it to, instead of be sent to the Board of Selectmen, to consider for approval, since Rick can approve that.
So the first paragraph on the top of page 6, the last sentence should have town administrator instead of Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
Any other changes to the minutes? Who would like to move to approve the minutes as corrected?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 24th, 2023 meeting as corrected. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, first item on our, action item on our new and unfinished business is ordinance number 11, series 2023, and this this isn't first reading, is it?
Yeah, we got just a draft.
Okay.
So,
Okay, got it. All right. An ordinance amending chapter 5.32 of the Georgetown Municipal Code entitled Hotel Licensing.
I can make a few remarks. The board, of course, has seen this a number of occasions, and has kind of consistently, as we move through this ordinance, refined it, or directed me to refine it, which I've done. The version that you have in your packet is a red line version, so it really shows the correction changes that you directed, I think, sort of almost a work session-like session we had during a regular meeting last time. I thought was pretty productive. So just to hit a few high points and then to take any questions and talk on first reading and got one more reading. You'll notice the categories of seasonal worker and construction extended stay go away, and that just turns into the category extended stay. So that's simpler. So you have two categories, extended stay transient and family extended stay. I'm kind of moving through it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm on page 2 and 3 of the red line. Just kind of in high points. So kind of telescope that and that's the definition. One way, the application form stuff is still the same. The next one, I guess I'd like to make be on page 4 of the ordinance, a fair amount of interest by the hotel providers and the board and the police department have been, okay, what records should be kept? And you'll notice that the records are shorter. That's a fairly short list now: name and address, make, type, license plate, if the vehicle is parked on the premises, day, month, and year of arrival of each guest, and that's what's kept. What's new, you'll notice, is all this red line material. The hotel providers have properly said, look, we don't want to be in the position of having a police department show up and say, okay, let me see your records right this minute, here I am standing in front of you. And what we have done here, and what I've done, is created basically an administrative hearing officer process. So if the department, anybody, the town wants to see those records, then they can provide an administrative subpoena that's heard by the judge or the judge's designee to determine whether it's appropriate. And even if ordering that they be released, the judge or the judge's designee could do so with conditions. Yes, you can have this for X amount of time, or I want to redact this information, that kind of thing. But that is responsive to the request we got, and it's also responsive to and kind of reflects the case law. There was a pretty good case, it was Patel, Patel versus, I forget what to say, in California, but that's kind of the leading case for this issue, and I was able to incorporate that in kind of short form way here. So I wanted to point that. Lastly, you'll see the terms transient family, extended stay, and extended stay on pages 4 and 5 of the ordinance. That sort of says this is what those kinds of stays need to look like, the facilities that need to be provided. That's shorter too. Fair amount of that information is less. It is true that hotel providers have said we don't want requirement, at all. And the direction I got from the board was that you still wanted that. So let's see if there was anything else I want to point out. Not really, I don't think. There's a, approval, denial, suspension, revocation process. The one change, summary suspensions on page 8, the last page. The hotel providers who are concerned that the town does not have the ability to just say, okay, I'm going to suspend your license. It's 2 in the afternoon. You've got to close your doors today at 2:30. And you'll notice that there's again, an administrative hearing officer appointed by the judge that would review whether or not a summary suspension was needed. So that's a thumbnail sketch of the ordinance. After you take any comments that you have. I think we provide this to the hotel providers, I believe.
And we did get one letter from Kelsey Weber, and that's in the packet, so.
Yeah. And I have received that, and I will also tell you, and I don't know if I put it in the notes, but the comments that you'll recall, I said, well, give me your comments and I'll see what we can do, and those were really helpful to end up producing a version that's fresh. So I also know, one last point, I also know that the board had discussed, well, let's at least get this in shape and then we'll determine whether it's something we need now for just the present landscape we have in terms of hotel providers or not. That's a decision that you can make on second reading. I believe that we will have the adoption on first reading tonight. I'll have all these red line changes accepted so that we can for your next meeting.
I have a question. The part where we said, no equipment outdoors. Well, it's a ski place. You're gonna have skis outside. Would that be prohibited? Would they have to bring their skis inside the room?
As written, yes, I mean,
And I'm just asking you guys, do you think that that's something that's a little too stringent?
And I think Kelsey or
Yes.
had brought a similar situation like that up, and I don't believe that was our intent. Our intent was,
See?
exactly, I agree, it was, lawn chairs and barbecues and, stuff that you were using it as an extra closet kind of thing. I shouldn't say closet when it comes to skis and shoes, and
Right.
so maybe if we can.
You guys are awesome.
We're gonna need that humorous approach later on in that meeting, so hold that retail. Please. Yeah, so I wouldn't have a problem with sports gear, maybe that's how we say it, or yeah, specific to the.
Well, it might not be a bad idea to put the kind of brackets outside on the wall that would support that kind of thing, so that they know that it's for skis and not for snowmobiles.
Yeah, the tough part about that though is, I mean, we just had a situation, and some ice disappeared at one of the places. So I mean, they leave your stuff outside, I traveled around for years, and we took our bikes into the room because we didn't want them to get stolen. But they were expensive bikes, so skis.
Oh, you don't think skis are expensive?
Oh, no, but that's where I'm going, I'm saying skis.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are pretty beat up, but I'm thinking my skis, I don't leave them outside of my house overnight, because I don't want them, so I don't know, you're kind of protecting
That's kind of.
people too, maybe.
But we're not trying to keep somebody from leaving a pair of wet, boots
outside,
outside, it's at your own risk kind of thing. So maybe Jerry's got some fun way of manipulating those words.
I've been making notes. Top of page 5, that's where it says no personal possessions, and I'll find other places where I put the name, but maybe present outside the room, including those. You can say no personal possessions exclusive of wearable sports gear, referring to skis, comment, etc.
The other thing, on page 5, as long as we're getting into little details like this, number 4 at the top, the maximum of 2 pets.
Mhm.
And I know we had a lot of conversation about this, but maybe we should put some clarifier that if pets are allowed, then a maximum of 2 pets, because I wouldn't want someone to turn around and have to say, no, your ordinance says you have to let my dogs here, or whatever. So, do you like that voice?
Insinuating a man would say.
So in the event the establishment permits pets, but that's.
There you go.
A maximum.
Right. Yes, Deanne?
I have a problem with things being outside the room. I realize our intent was big things like again, a barbecue or something. But if there's an emergency, like say, for example, a fire and or the electric's out, all of that stuff would be trip hazards and could cause problems. And I realize that the hotel motel is liable for that, but it still seems like stuff outside the door isn't good, and it would almost have to have some sort of lockbox situation so that their skis don't disappear.
Well, sort of be up to the guest. I mean, if the hotel isn't providing that, I don't know that the ordinance should necessarily dictate that a facility, but if the hotel's not providing it, then the owner of those skis gets to make his or her choice about, how safe they feel about where they're leaving them.
That kind of comes back though to when the fire department does their regular inspections, and if they find that, the clutter out there from somebody's skis or boots or whatever seems to be an issue, they're gonna take that up with the hotel owner. That wasn't our intent to, when we were putting this together. Right.
Permitting them to be outside does not require them to be, like a lot of other things for the fire department. I guess I just leave it at that. Permitting them doesn't require them. Just trying to accomplish both things you want, which is to prohibit certain things outside, but to give people a break on some sports equipment. And that means they get to make their own choices about that sport. They've got the ability to put it outside, but that might raise other issues for them, and they're doing that, so it'd be kind of a.
Hunting rifles are allowed along with your ski equipment.
It would be a wearable sports.
Well, you put it on the chair.
It might be better just to look at this.
What else has the board?
I like your clause. Simple, concise.
Sure, let's try it and we'll
Let's
see
try it.
how we
Let's see how we
manipulate it
can
next time.
Yeah, let's see. There you go.
Makes sense. Any other suggestions, comments, concerns?
There's a motion on that.
Yes.
I have one question. Did you fill in
You
the
did.
blog on page
You're
4?
right, correct.
No, we didn't. What's your suggestion, Chief?
Number 3 on page 4.
What's the number of days they gotta get this information?
Such records shall be maintained by the license board, yes.
What's your suggestion?
100, or
6 months?
what's 6 months?
180. 180 is
Yeah, that's
usually the-
180.
I'll put in 180 and
Okay.
we'll ship this out to the hotel providers again. This is,
Oh,
this
sure.
and other items maybe once they want to comment on it for second reading. There's a motion in the packet, but there should be, amendments to other hotel licensing as corrected, I guess. Should be fine.
I move to approve first reading of ordinance number 11, series 2023, an ordinance amending chapter 5.32 of the Georgetown Municipal Code entitled Hotel Licensing, as corrected.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 11, series 2023. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Moving on, we have, recommendation of an encroachment agreement from the planning commission, and this was for Jeff Savage at 403 4th Street.
Okay, so this is a situation in which the owner was told that he cannot park his truck overnight in the parking lot. And then he was communicated that he cannot allow an entrance through the back parking lot when he was doing contract work to fix the house up. I told him that there's, the only way that we can do this officially is for him to apply for an application, or else he can't do it. So it's like, you can't do it, or you apply for an application for an encroachment license. So a year went by, and I noticed that, it was opened up, and he was still using it when he came back in town. And so, I didn't really think about it until I stopped and talked to some of the neighbors, and the neighbors were like, yeah, this is going on. So I contacted, the applicant and communicated what the decision was gonna be, and he immediately applied for an encroachment license. So that license then was brought to the planning commission. And, I've got a summary, but there's 5 reasons why he has asked for this, and I'll just read it for you just to clarify it. The first reason is 403 4th Street is a second home for the applicant, and he comes to Georgetown only a few times a year. So he's not here year round, he only comes in, and every time he comes in, he has trouble parking, because on the front side, on 4th Street, it's narrow, and he doesn't have, the neighbors also park, and so he's not able to park close enough to his home, and he has issues whenever he brings in things, and so it's a convenient factor. So that's the first one. Second is, there's limited, well, it goes into what I said, there's limited parking on 4th Street, which his neighbors usually park on the street, and requires the applicant to park far away. Number 3, the walkway to his home is shared with his neighbor, is extremely narrow to get his possessions to his property. That's a difficult thing. He bought the home with that already, and it wasn't something that the town created. It was already there. So it's an inconvenience. And number 4, the rear access through 3rd Street parking lot is much easier for the family to unload their possessions than it is from 4th Street. And 5th, the applicant's neighbor has no problem allowing him to use her property on the back side of 403 4th Street to park his vehicle which is where he parks once he goes through the Third Street parking lot. So he goes through, there's maps that I put in here, he goes through both of the town lots, and then he parks on her lots, and then he enters his home from the rear. So, the planning commission, talked about it for a long time. I think they really came down to, they're okay with it, they weren't really, excited about it because it's town lots and then this could create potential issues. So they came up with two conditions to make sure it wouldn't create issues. One is, if someone happens to block your entrance, you can't force the person to move the vehicle. If you're not guaranteed a parking spot or an entry. The second is, if you are blocked, you can't get a tow truck to tow it away because it's not your property. This is town-owned lot. And he had no problem with that. And the board made a recommendation to recommend it to you guys.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Based on the maps and everything that the applicant provided, and I refer back to his application under number 2, his property doesn't abut or is not adjacent to his own property. Diane Anderson owns the property in between, so therefore he doesn't have the right, he doesn't have standing to apply for an encroachment.
I was curious about that too. Shouldn't it be Diane that's applying for the encroachment license, possibly?
That would be more appropriate under this, but then we still go back to, and then we can have that encroachment argument again, or discussion about if it's a benefit to the town. But I don't think this applicant has standing to apply for an encroachment license.
Jerry, you got a comment?
Well, to be able to encroach, you have to be adjacent to the right of way that you want to encroach on. If you was to just want, and that's a matter of, do you want to put physical facilities or just have access?
He just wants access to come through the town lot, and then he's parking on her, but she has no problem letting him park on her lot.
Which, like as of right now, she doesn't, but what if she does? And then if the town gives them right to do that, does that create another situation or an issue?
What, more accurately, I think, Mary makes, and I see Deanna's got a question too. Let me answer Mary's question. Because this isn't a fence or a rock wall or something that you're encroaching into the right of way, that's what the encroachment permit's for. And Mary's right, you can't encroach with if you're not encroaching from property that you own that's next to the right of way you want to encroach on. The category this really should fit under is some kind of non-exclusive access easement. And the town can grant easements to people that aren't adjacent. An easement's an easement. So my inclination would be that this needs to go back to him to ask for the right thing, which is an easement, some kind of access easement across my property. And we can look at it that way. Now, a lot of the review is the same in terms of what the policy considerations are, but it's truly not an encroachment, to be honest.
And we're also not telling him that he can't access that parking lot like anyone else would, to park the vehicle, grab his bag of groceries and walk across his neighbor's property if she's giving him permission to access his backyard, and then go back into his car and park on the street or wherever he belongs. I also have a problem with the pictures that he posted, and I think we shouldn't be allowing vehicles to be parking parallel or angle parking on 4th Street, which minimizes the street width and parking situations for the rest of the residents that are there.
At a minimum, when as the application does come back, it's important to have the, whatever permission or not he's going to get from the intervening property owner, because that's relevant to, I think if I were board member, that'd be relevant to whether I wanted to grant that. Deanne's got it.
Yeah, Deanne?
Once upon a time, Georgetown was a friendly place. This guy is just asking for a little bit of leeway. It may be letter of the law that is his property isn't adjacent. He's got the agreement of that property owner. Even though what you're talking about is letter of the law right, I don't think it's right or fair or kind to give him this much static. The only reason he applied for this was because Rick told him to. Had he come to the board first, it seems like we could have just said, as long as you agree to that you don't have guaranteed parking there, that you can't tow anything, then fine, and I think we should return to that and let it go. I think we should allow him to park there. It's close to the back of his house. And it just seems like nitpicking isn't we used to be friendly and nice, and this isn't friendly and nice. This is legal.
Well, and that's what we're basically, we need to follow legal channels, and I disagree with you, Deanne. I think if he had come straight to the board, I don't think the board could have granted that to him just because it was a friendly request. I think we need to go through whatever appropriate channel is dictated by what he's requesting, and it does sound like it's not an encroachment. It sounds like it is more of an easement of some type, so, that's my feeling.
I have a question. Will he have to
Yes.
go back in front of the planning commission?
It's a different thing that they're granting, so,
Okay,
I
just didn't know if that process was the same for easement as he
well,
was asking for.
yeah, but their approval, what they granted in their meeting was specific to an encroachment. And so technically he does need to go back and request the right thing. Probably don't need to, draw it out anymore. I mean, just,
Yeah.
change the application, so. So. Do we need a motion to
What
deny?
I'd be inclined to do is to take a motion to continue this application indefinitely. That way you haven't said no necessarily.
Okay.
And that positions him to make a different application that will
Okay.
go a little faster.
Shouldn't we deny the encroachment because he doesn't have the right to apply for an encroachment, and then he can be directed to pursue other actions? Because we're not gonna look at another encroachment from him.
Either way, I mean, continuing it indefinitely means you're not gonna reschedule it.
Okay.
If you wanna tell him no, that's okay too. Either way, you're correct, he's gonna have to reapply. Continuing it indefinitely is a little more kind.
And we don't want to do that.
We'll be kind.
There you go.
So, who is going to make that motion?
I'll make that motion that
And I'll
Jerry
second it.
recommended.
Okay, and you're seconding, Rob?
Correct.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this request indefinitely. All in favor, say aye.
I
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have, an amended easement agreement request, for the Arctic thing, off of Skyline.
So, Justin's here, so thanks for coming. I will just share some things and then you can feel free to add others. When I was looking through this one, I got a request from Mr. Scott that he wanted to have the easement, that was already, granted. He just wanted to change it a little bit. Change it from, it was kind of going diagonal through the town lot to having a switchback kind of going into it, to make it easier access, to get through the property. As I was doing the reports, the first thing that we did was send it to Mike Davenport to make sure it gets reviewed completely. Like, did we miss anything? He's our town planner. We spoke to him about it. Mike did a thorough report, a review, and then when Mike and I were reviewing the review, it dawned on me that it expired already. Your easement's already expired, because it says in there that you get 1 year, and if you don't build within a year, it automatically expires. So in a sense, this really should be not necessarily an amendment because it's expired, so it's a new, in a sense, we're bringing it back. But one of the feedback from the planner was we need to get feedback from staff and to make sure they've commented to look at this. And so, and during the process, we didn't have time to get feedback yet. So they're all aware now, but I'm waiting for their review, and I was hoping to get it tonight, I just couldn't. But I spoke to Kelly Babby, and he is going to give review for EMS and fire trucks. Can they get through that? We'll get review from Ryan for any, utilities, if there's anything going through. We'll get from Randy, just police, traffic, and then from Scooter, road bridge. We'll just get feedback from everybody.
I would also request a thorough review of all of the restrictions that apply to the former BLM property that this is across.
Okay.
So if it limits our ability to change I believe if I'm recalling correctly, the easement that we granted there was a track already in. So we granted the easement for residential development on that mining claim. To change that, I'm not sure where we stand in all of those restrictions, so I would careful review of that.
And then the other final review was from an engineer of just making sure whatever changes that the switchback, retaining walls or whatever that is, that would be sufficient for what that use is. So, and so the recommendation is to table this so that we can get the reviews done. Is there anything you could add, Justin?
So the way the driveway is now, the previous approval, there's no way to make it meet town code. It's just too steep. So having the switchback is literally the only legal way for me to build a driveway to the house. And then on top of that, if we do the switchback, if somebody were to develop the American plan, that would give access 3/4 of the way up the American plan instead of having a separate driveway in the future.
So it kind of gives potential, someone else could still use it, not just your driveway.
Right. Yeah. If somebody does develop it, I'd appreciate it. They help. You can cover some of my costs and maintenance, but that's later down the road.
When you get there, please make sure that you have that documented, because that comes up to us too many times when someone's agreed to it or suggests that, and then years down the line, it comes back and you're stuck.
So I need to bring something next time.
Well, whenever this whole thing comes back, I'm just for yourself, so that you don't rely on the town saying, oh yeah, that was kind of a good idea, but there's nothing written.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm speaking out of line, but it's come up to haunt us.
Good point.
I agree with Mary on that too, for sure.
That's all I have right now. When does the board meet next, or whoever?
In 2 weeks.
Okay. So then, will I know something in 2 weeks, or do I need to wait another month?
Well, it depends on how fast I get the reviews back to me. In engineering, we'll ask our local on-call engineer to make an assessment. But that's up to him how soon. I still have projects I'm waiting on from him 2 months ago.
Okay.
So I don't know. I can ask him to rush.
Is it Craig?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody's waiting on Craig.
Yeah. He's just a busy man. So yeah, I mean, in theory, we should have everything in writing for you, but.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? So there is a recommended motion to continue.
I'll make I move to continue the meeting in order to meet all the conditions that were recommended by the town planner.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue this item to a future meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next, we have Bighorn Crossing Development. This is a continued public hearing on resolution number 10, series 2023. Get that open. It is 7 p.m. So, public hearing is now open. Any comments from the public?
If you don't mind, I can maybe,
Okay.
remind us where we're, it's been a month, I think, since the
Yep.
board last saw this and continued it. You had asked for, basically sort of background information on the project from me. So as you see, I went to school on a project and went through the various documents that represent kind of a landscape of documents that govern the Bighorn Crossing project. That's largely background for the board to the specific application that's in front of you, which is much narrower. But you'll see you have a memo from me and also a memo from Nicole Matthews here on behalf of Bighorn that really kind of covers the same material in a couple different ways. Mine identifies major approval documents, if you will. There's the resolution from 2017, development agreement, subdivision improvements agreement, pretty standard, and then the two plats, the current plat on the property. It's the first amended Bighorn Crossing subdivision plat that is the plat that's proposed to be corrected by the application that's here. My memo gives you, again, kind of the short course on the Bighorn Crossing project, including the dredging of the lake, which is not in front of you, but nevertheless, I do want the context, and I think it's important to get it, so I've done that. As we sort of narrow that focus down to the request for the correction, the board members who are here will recall, and others have heard it said a number of times, well, when the hotel was to be built, it ran up against this 50% has to be commercial, or no more than 50% can be residential. I forget that's right, I think it's that on that particular site, and that the workaround for that, the board really wanted that hotel to happen. The workaround for that was to designate by plat note hospitality units, and thereby, when you designate them, they turn into a commercial use. And it was the math in terms of the area in that area got adjusted by virtue of that. And that was the technique to create that. Plat notes, among other things, what isn't changing is to say that with these hospitality units, no matter where located, can't be put into the town's short-term rental program. And that was important to the board as well. Would it not be something that would turn into short-term rentals in that context? Rentals certainly through the hotel when permitted, but not short-term rentals. And that provision remains the same. The other questions, a couple other questions the board had were, well, tell us about the overall development plan here. And I told you, well, there is not a master plan, this is not a PUD. So what you have are tracts of property that have zoning. And like any other tract of property in the town, whether it be in Bighorn or anywhere else, if you have zoning and you're unbuilt, you look to the zone district to determine what your permitted uses are. And so this particular property is lot 5, lot 2, I think, is zoned for multi-family uses, and the proposal, of course, is to build these micro apartments on that lot. But micro apartments are not individually titled because they're apartments. And the hospitality units that are platted, at least unbuilt on that tract, the only way for them to be, separately conveyed and titled would be as hospitality units, as single family duplex. If it's an apartment building, well, you can create a regime. That's not a good way it would be very difficult to carry forward that plat restriction. I'm saying it a different way, an easier way. It'd be really difficult to carry forward that plat restriction when you have units in the hotel. So this isn't units in a apartment building. So that's the overall context. The specific question is, okay, user unbuilt, we want to be able to clear this title constraint on lot 5, lot 2. Let's move these hospitality units to other lots within the development, and that's the request. The constraint really is just to plat lines. The board did ask, and I was able to confirm, no lot lines need to change. There are no new lots being created. The easements that are in place are sufficient to serve proposed new use. So the plat lots could effectively, the removal of the plat lots, if the resolution is approved, clear that title constraint, and that is what it does. I did promise Nicole, who's also done a memo for you, and gave you a presentation last time that was assisted by visual aids, and I think we can all help that will help us all. It certainly helped me, and I spoke with her before the meeting, and she'd like to have a few minutes to begin kind of recap what you told the board, and kind of, okay, where are these things and where are they going, and show us that in color, please, kind of thing. And so if you would not mind asking Nicole, she can do that.
Yes, please. Yeah, happy to do that. And I think there's two things in your packet that are good. Depends, right? Some people are word people and some people are picture people. So I think the two things that kind of summarize it best is this chart that's in there in your packet. This is kind of the word version of what what we're asking the board to do, which is, as Jerry just said, so very well, which is, right now, the plat note said that 11 sublots across the site would be limited so that they are deemed commercial units and that no one person can occupy them, more than 60 consecutive days or 120 cumulative days. And what we've noted there is that we would just be, 7 of those are already built on lot 4, those won't be touched. 3 had been previously identified, and honestly, when we were picking these in the 11th hour and coming up with this plat note, none of us really know. We threw darts at the board to pick where these were gonna be. But 3 of those would now be moved from lot 5 over to lot 8, and 1 is already on lot 8. So instead of having the remaining 4 split between lot 5 and lot 8, they would all go to lot 8. And then the other plat note was these additional hospitality units. Again, that plat note, as Jerry mentioned, was done with the idea that nobody really wanted these to be just true second homes, purchased by people and then put in a rental pool, or trying to get into the short-term rental program. But recognizing that there might be occasion where it'd be, handy for these to be rented out through the hotel ownership and use as additional keys, but not be burdening the town with, again, additional short-term rental applications. And so there was a concession that, 30 sublots could be identified on the whole project for short-term basis usage if offered by the hospitality provider on lot 1. We had a designation of how many of those. This is really, again, to the benefit of the overall development, and 20 of those sublots could have been within lot 5, and we're proposing just to eliminate that altogether. Again, that was a benefit to the developer, but we don't see the need, we're not seeing the need for that, the way that this is working out. So we would just eliminate that, and there would only be the existing, the proposed additional hospitality units that would continue forward on lot 8 and 9, 5 on lot 8 and 2 on lot 9. The other thing, so that was the words. If you look at the map, I think this is really what is helpful in there. And this shows, this is what would occur here. This is sort of the current, what we're proposing plan. And it would just be, you can see here what's planning to go within the lot 5 of block 2, and that it meets the same footprints, and that we would just be moving. The red are those additional hospitality units, or the use restricted hospitality units would all be on lot 8. So, I don't have the other color. I know there's another color page in yours as well that shows where it is currently, but really it's moving those 4 red blocks out of lot 5 onto lot 8. That's the depiction there for that. Pretty straightforward. Our memo that we provided as well was intended, I know there was a number of questions that came up last time, just about the, again, the overall development, the overall thought, and some questions generally about that. Weren't as specific to the plat notes, but we wanna, answer any questions, posed to us and make ourselves available, so we addressed, water usage and the zoning. I know these are permitted uses by right here, so we tried to answer all that in our memo. I know you guys are very thoroughly read and read everything in there, so I won't walk back through it, but we are here to answer any questions about the master drawings, the memo, or what else we can tell you at this time.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah. So, any questions?
So I have a question. Lot 8, so that there's 4 units, but it could be up to 20 more hospitality since they were eliminated from number 5?
No, the 20 that we eliminated was the potential for us to designate additional hospitality units that could be short-term rented by the owners. We just eliminated those entirely. So the way the plat note reads, we didn't add those back anywhere else.
Okay.
So that would take out the potential of those 20 to go into a short-term usage through the hospitality provider. We didn't move those. We didn't feel it was necessary to move them. Again, we're not feeling like the market is in need of that, and it wasn't the same requirement that we needed. It was a request that we had made and how we thought this might play out. So those didn't get moved. They just got eliminated altogether.
I see.
And Rich, I distinguish those, which were kind of, well, by the way, let's just do this, from really what drove the whole hospitality unit concept, which was this 50%, no more than 50%, the residential constraint. And that does drive the 3 hospitality units that need to be preserved because that area is still important to support the hotel, but they need to move.
4 additional.
Well, one was already on lot 8.
One's already moved.
One was already designated to lot 8
Okay.
previously, and 3 were on lot 5. We're just moving them, so all 4 together.
Understand, I'm also making the distinction between, one was planned for lot 8. Yeah.
Correct.
But it's not built, so
Correct.
there's 4 additional ones that still need to be built.
Yeah, it would be built in the
Yes.
future.
Yes, but they'll be all on lot 8, yeah. Not. So,
I still don't see this as a correction. I see this as an amendment, and there was a proposal that went through DRC Planning Commission, the board. I know this is muddied down because several issues have come up over the years, but to me, this is not a simple, oh, the I forgot to be dotted. This is a change, this is an amendment, this is not a correction, and I don't support it at this level. I think it needs to be kicked back.
Yeah, I mean, correcting would imply there was a mistake in the original plot, which there wasn't, right?
Right, they're admitting that the market has changed. I'm not surprised at that. It's been several years. Perhaps the market has been changed. But the proposal for this development, whether you call it a planned unit development or not, the proposal had gone through all of our commissions, through our community, and had the opportunity to have the public weigh in on it. And I don't think that this is a simple matter. I think this is changing the entire scope of the development. I question when we, back however many years ago, when the apartments that are built now, there was a moment there where they were going to become condominiums instead of apartments, and we put a moratorium on them. And they went back to apartments. And so when we talk use by right, I just, this to me is not a correction. This is a major change. And I'm not comfortable approving it.
Well, yeah, the situation too, I mean, obviously they have a public hearing back then too, so is that kind of what you're looking towards? Because it's the same thing, if you're changing it to this degree, then the public should know, otherwise they're going, wait a second, this is not what we agreed on being built here. correct?
Correct,
Am I looking at that wrong?
yeah, no,
But that's exactly what we rely on those committees for.
exactly.
Remembering that, and it's for the board's discussion, but this is a public hearing.
Well,
And we have
that was my
noticed-
next question.
We have noticed this out as a public hearing.
But we aren't giving the benefit to two other commissions that can weigh in on this as to how this project is going to move forward. I know that there is a feeling that there is separation, that you can't do one before the other. I think they should be in tandem, and this is not in tandem. Right now, we don't have any proposals in front of DRC for the next development. The one that had been presented back in the spring has now expired. And so to me, we're at square one.
Yeah, I mean, it did, part of it did at least go through DRC though, correct?
The whole project went through the DRC and we've got approval for a COA.
No, you
We
don't.
received
You
it.
don't have an
We don't
approval
right now.
because it's
We
expired.
But we did have a COA, and we were going through the building permit process, and that's when this issue of the plat note came through. So the
Jerry sent
DRC,
us a letter in June that we could not have a building permit until this plat note was resolved. Now it's 5 months later, and we're still waiting for this plat note to be changed.
So it should go through the process.
so the DRC did go through the process, it was
But
approved.
that was on another version.
No,
No,
it's
no,
exactly,
no,
there's nothing.
it was this
You're
version.
changing the version right here.
No, the plat note, that is exactly the version that they approved. The footprint that we're showing you is what went through the DRC and I think it's in the packet of all the site plans, all the lines,
Everything
everything.
was approved.
Everything was approved,
Well,
all
look,
the
here's an
exteriors,
opportunity.
everything.
Here's an opportunity for us as a town to review this again. And I'm sorry that it's taking you a little bit, some time, but I'll tell you this, the complaints that I've been getting out of your product have been monumental. I mean, you should be absolutely embarrassed with regard to the quality of the work that you've been handed out. I've talked to owners who bought your condos. I've talked to the people who have lived in your apartments, and they have absolutely noted things like, when it rains, there's water coming out of the electrical outlets. I mean, would you live in a place like that? I don't think so. So if you're a little, well, yeah, we gotta go back to the drawing board about this kind of a thing. I'm sorry, but we're gonna take issue with your quality.
Okay, that's not what we're discussing.
What it isn't for me.
I know there's a lot of emotion around this, but what we're being asked to do is to correct what.
That's fine, but I agree with Mary.
Okay. The original, 11 hospitality units were set out to be in specific places. And there has been a change to where those are going to be. 7 of them are in existence, 4 remain to be built, and they are intended to be built on lot 8. And the plat amendment that we've got here, that's all it changes. The other thing that it does change is that it does eliminate those additional hospitality units that were not going to be deed restricted. They were going to allow the property owner to occupy the home more than those deed restricted ones. And it was going to be optional for them to allow their homes to be used as hospitality units. And that does get eliminated, which apparently does not change. It doesn't bring the level of commercial, use to critical mass.
Not necessary for
basically.
the 3 units that are to be moved
So,
are the ones that are necessary for this 50%.
okay,
The additional hospitality units, sort of a additional technique, but those were not necessary to drive the
correct,
50% rule.
correct.
Yeah.
So
what we've got in front of us tonight, yes, we have other issues with how things have gone and what is talked about, but then ends up changing, and some of that is just totally legitimate development changes. Yes, it feels like we thought we were buying a bill of goods, and that's not what we end up with, but that's not what we're being asked for tonight. And I don't think we should be holding our expectations for the rest of the development, as this plat amendment shouldn't be held hostage for that. I think the plat amendment needs to correct what is not correct right now. That's my feeling on what we're looking at right now is just a resolution to correct, or an ordinance, actually it is. Resolution to correct and what is not accurate in that original plat note.
Because units were sold and they shouldn't have been, the units were sold without the deed restrictions that should have been. That's not a correction, that's a major change.
No units have been sold without the deed restriction that were supposed to be sold. Like, the deed restriction were placed on the ones in lot 4 that were required. We are asking at this time to move the 3 that were anticipated to be on lot 5 to lot 8.
But that's not a correction, that's an amendment. Are we done with the public hearing? Can I make a motion, or do we need to?
We could take the micro units and create lots within them and own them and put these in there, but I don't think that's an effective way or what was intended by this.
Well, and I don't like forget about the past or whatever. I see what you guys are trying to do. My hardest thing is coming from residential construction. If I at all change the way I do a subdivision, it automatically becomes an amendment, not just a little change. But I hear what you're saying too, Jerry. Like I'm just stuck on the amendment thing. It's doing the right process. And it does make me happy that at least part of it went through DRC. But I don't know if that was right. Is this something that should have went through planning commission too, or do we utilize all of our boards?
And that's the
And
concern.
I do get the public hearing. This is part of it, and people should look at this. You know, if it was actually posted there or not, you know, people will complain regardless if they didn't catch it.
If we're struggling through every facet of this, regardless, we are not ready to approve this. We're not. We have too many questions. There are too many situations. There are too many things that still need to come to our attention and to go through the process. We're not ready to move forward and say yes. We're not ready to approve it.
Okay. John, any thoughts?
I have a lot of problems with this.
Okay.
I agree with Mary that it seems kind of, we skipped the planning commission. And they're kind of a big deal with all this stuff. You know, I understand what you're saying. It's just, we spent a whole lot of time on this originally. And I get it, you know, it wasn't what we thought we were doing. That's all right. Maybe better warnings next time when something like this happens, if ever. But I do have problems with moving things around without knowing what this next area kind of is going to do, because we'll be back in another hearing wondering about how this is going to work with the next project. Seems to me.
Okay. Dan, any thoughts?
Pretty much the same. I think this is so cobbled together at this point that we need both more time to figure out what exactly needs done. And also, I really think it needs to start over. It's been forever since it was initially put in. Now there's all kinds of changes wanting to be made beyond just clarifications of boundaries of a lot line. And it just, this needs to do a do-over. This isn't acceptable, and there's no point in worrying about voting on how many units can be put where, when the whole thing needs to be clarified and given back to us, and we need the opinions of Planning Commission and DRC, and they no longer have DRC's certificate of occupancy and, you know, all of that. We need to just do it right because it's been too long.
So I guess, so I would agree that because the DRC certificate of appropriateness is no longer in place, it's expired, that they do have to go back to DRC for new approval. I don't really agree that they need to go back to planning commission because they're not changing anything that is zoning related. They're not asking for this to be considered as a planned development. They're not asking for any kind of subdivision. The properties exist already and they are already, the zoning allows certain uses by right. And so whether that is what we would prefer that they build rather than what they're intending to build, you know, I need to separate myself from that subjective decision opinion, because if it meets the zoning, then they have a right to build that. What this plat amendment does is it moves what had been approved to be the locations of the hospitality units, it moves them to different locations. That's all this does. And we're overcomplicating things by letting a lot of personal feeling come into it. There will be other opportunity to offer comment, opinion, but I don't think this is where it comes in, other than this is the problems that have occurred in the past are causing conflict and difficulty with making this the simple decision that I have come to see it as. I guess that's where I'm standing. So
what is the process then with, because I'm just really hung up on it really truly being an amendment. What is the process for that? Because that goes back to the same thing. We just had that discussion over the last couple of topics, doing it the right way.
Well, you go back through subdivision review.
Sounds like that's where we need to go.
Yeah, and subdivision review is, you know, the whole vote. And, but let's remember, that would be subdivision review to change two plat notes. But, you know, the board has largely said what it wants to say here. And my suggestion is that you probably close the hearing. And there are two motions. There was the printed back, but then Rick, I think, handed out. There's a handout with this, there's an approve and there's a deny.
Jerry, can I ask just a point of clarification, just so I understand, right? So if this goes back to subdivision review, right, because it's not a PUD, it's not a rezoning, it is a subdivision review, because that's what we're talking about, is a plat map, which laid out the lot and blocks. So what would be considered as part of that, again, it's not a PUD where there's specified uses on each lot and block. What would be that review process and what would be in that, because we would be bringing it forward only with the two plat maps. There would be nothing else changing on what we would be presenting.
That's exactly right. It's not a PUD, so it's not zoning. So it would be a subdivision application that for probably, if I'm inventing the numbers here, if there's say 10 submission requirements for a subdivision application, 9 of them would apply. Again, trust me, I'm inventing numbers, but just to give you a sense to answer the questions, Carolyn. And it would be not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. Plat notes, here's the old ones, here's the new ones. And all the other lines, the easements, the lots, would remain the same. And that would get reviewed by planning commission, and it would get reviewed by the board. So it would come back to you, the same, you get the same material here, but it would be the heading on your little sheet instead of correction with the subdivision, amended subdivision, like the second amended subdivision plat,
If that's the way they go.
if they choose to do that, yes. But in answer to Nicole's question, that would be the process. You don't really have, as we know from last meeting, you don't have a plat correction process in the subdivision regulations per se, and so you have, the only other process you have for something that is small in size is the exemption. This is not a subdivision, therefore we can prove it. That is the process you're using, which all the board members have weighed in on. So, unless the applicant wants to continue, I suspect not, because.
No, I don't think we would want to continue. I'm just trying to understand, we do that process. It's not like through that process, I know originally there were depictions and things just so that conceptually there could be there was concepts, but those are not tied, and we would not need to put forth any of those concepts.
No, you wouldn't be.
That's not a standard, it's a plat, so it's not, all that stuff would be the same materials.
You're right, you already have the plat that you otherwise would be taking through a subdivision plat process. And so it's, see this plat, we want to correct this plat note on it, and that would be planning commission dialogue, and then it would go to the board, same thing. I think that's the right, if this process isn't approved, I think that is the right,
And it would seem
That's
like
what's
going through that process, potential future uses or water usage or any of that other stuff would not be within the purview of what should be considered by the board and approving that plat, because it's not applicable, it's just a plat, it's not a PUD.
That's correct. You're platting, uses by right that are subject to other constraints, as a result of the original approval, water supply, et cetera. But those things are not, enforced by the plat. The hospitality unit scheme, for lack of a better way of saying it, is enforced by the plat because that's where it lives in the form of these plat notes. So with that in mind, you've got two motions, make one of them, and we can go on to agenda item number 5.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry. And just, because honestly, I think too, I don't have any issues with what you guys had there, what I've done, or whatever. I basically look at my experience of what I do. And so on the smallest scale of building a house, if I change one wall in a house, I can try to sneak it in, or I can go, okay, I go back, we go with safe build, you guys dealt with them, and I have to resubmit drawings, and it has to go back to their plan review before we move on to the next phase. That's kind of how I look at this too with an amendment, which is probably what we should have said meetings back instead of just going like where we're at now. So that, I apologize personally, I wish I would have kind of understood this a little bit better. But I mean, that's how I see it as an amendment, and when you change it, it has to go through the process. Even on the smallest scale.
Well, my experience in land use, working for the county for 27 plus years, they have a plan amendment process in place that specifically does this kind of small, we're not changing the great big scope, we are correcting something on a plat. And so I look at it more as a simple process. Doesn't need to be overcomplicated by sending it back to planning commission, just,
But this is extremely different than what it was gonna be, correct?
Not what's being proposed, I mean, not what was approved, there was just a lot. So again, it's not a PUD, and I think that, I just have to say, our frustration here is, right, when this was raised, after getting the COA, and we discussed it, in most jurisdictions, there is a minor correction process, and there is not one here. And so Jerry and I spent, this very smart lawyer, okay, this is a way to do it, because otherwise we'll be coming in with maps that look just like they do now with this change. And so trying to do that, in a process, right, we're in a state in the Front Range, which is all saying we're all in need of additional housing. And now we've spent all these months to then go back and we're gonna be sent back to do exactly the same thing we just went. And I don't know that we'll do that versus, I mean, that we would end up in a different place if we go through that we'll just end up back here and still being denied. And I think that what's being raised here and the questions about the product being delivered is not within the purview of what's being asked and is exceeding the parameters that should be considered by this board. So we have to consider our next actions, because it doesn't make sense for us to go back through that process to end up, we're gonna be raising the exact same questions, presenting the exact same materials on the exact same notes, and why it's been those back time without, I mean, we'll tackle it a different legal way.
I would hope you would listen to what the board is expressing to you, though, and take that into consideration when you do move forward on this. We're giving you a lot of information for free here, and you're hearing, hopefully, what we're representing this community wants.
Which is, I'm sorry, what exactly? Because I'm not hearing what they would want instead of apartments that we are offering as a residential offering that we could get to the community that we think is.
We've been walking into this Bighorn development with the thought that it was going to be built as presented and approved by us back in 2018. But let's go with that document, when it was signed, sealed, and delivered in early 2018, which was the brewery, the micro shop, the 50, 60 some odd townhomes, the 3 apartment buildings, and that's all been changed. And yet here we come back to every time that we have heard this issue before us in these last couple of months, you're still hearing that same information or those same statements from us. That's our expectation. That's what we're anticipating. Now, you may change it, but let's see the whole scope. I felt like we got flipped off when you were just talking about what's going to go into lot 5, and you're not even concerned about lot 8. You know, when we started to talk about water a couple of weeks ago or a couple of meetings ago, and that was you, Kurt. You know, you're just, there's water, there's water. If there's no water, guess I can't build. Well, then that doesn't help, that doesn't help the
water
plant.
from this city and allowed this city to have a sewer system and a water augmentation program. I paid $2.4 million to the city.
Thank you.
For my water. I have all the water I need to build these 50 units.
And I think that's probably a concern, because what was approved in 2018 was not 50 townhomes, it was a plat, and there is zoning in place. And that's not gonna change if we come through with a subdivision plan, and that's beyond the purview of what's being presented, and we'll need to tackle that through legal processes.
Okay. So what we've got before us is the plat, correction. And I think it's probably not productive to argue about anything outside of that scope at this time. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. It is 7:15 PM, and ask for a motion, please.
I move to deny resolution number 10, series 2023, approving a correction to the First Amendment Bighorn subdivision crossing subdivision part.
I'll second.
John seconded it, sorry. It's been moved and seconded to deny the resolution number 10, series 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. All right, next we have, engagement agreement with Alpestein and Hotel, the contract agreement.
So this one happened to be at a time where I reached out to our water attorneys because I was working on our land use application to make sure we put correct information about if we have to reach out to third parties, what is their accurate, and I could not find the agreement. And so I reached out to, I reached out to all of them just to confirm that it was accurate, what I had. And she communicated to me, and this is Cynthia Codell, that they just happened to have not increased their rates since we, did a contract with them. And so they were already in the process of submitting a contract to us, so it happened to be around the same time. So they're going from $200 an hour for their rates to $220 per hour. And then I think there's a little bit of, for their, legal help, that they're moving, paralegal help is just moving up, I think, from like 80 to 90 or something like that, is what I remember.
So, any questions about any of this?
And we've already budgeted for this anticipated.
After our budget workshop tonight, we will.
That's why I'm bringing it up. So I don't have to amend it.
So I move to approve the engagement agreement for Alperstein and Cavell PC.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the engagement agreement. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next we have discussion or there may be a motion. Yes, on board attendance.
Thank you. I promised the board that I would sort of formalize and describe in writing what your constraints and considerations are around the board rules of procedure, and in particular the in-person attendance rule that the board adopted a few months ago. In light of the request by Selectman Powell to not appear in person and to continue to appear virtually. As you know, the attendance rule that you adopted, among other things, requires board members to attend in person with the exception of, I think, 4 meetings per calendar year. Selectman Powell has objected to that, and you heard her objection in the public meetings. And that has told me that this needs to be at least examined under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the reason for that is because Selectman Powell has said that she's, in addition to not being comfortable in public meetings, believe she's sort of becoming ill. Under the ADA, when someone makes a request for a reasonable accommodation, you must evaluate that request. The standards for making such a request under the ADA are really pretty forgiving, under the theory that, you can make a request in any form, orally, in writing, etc. And Selectman Powell specifically made the request that the board not enforce that requirement on her attendance. And she made that request in one of the most recent meetings. So that satisfies the test under the ADA. That triggers then an obligation of the board to determine a couple of things, whether or not the person in this case, Selectman Powell, is a qualified person with a disability, and if so, what reasonable accommodations to the rule should be made, and that's a 2-stage process. If you're not determined to be a qualified person with a disability, then you don't get to stage 2. You don't get to reasonable accommodations because, for example, another board member who does not have a disability would be required simply to attend. Whether or not they wanted to, as a matter of personal preference, they'd be required to comply with the rule. And so the 2-page memo you have says that, I don't know whether more or less eloquently, but it says it. And so as applied here, you have now the obligation to evaluate that request. And in order to do that, typically, if this were an example of some other employee or another organization, you'd ask, and the request for disability was what you needed to determine, you would ask that person to bring in a doctor's note, etc. And to kind of demonstrate whether or not there was a true disability in place. asked Selectman Powell that. The police judge, asked if she would be willing to provide that, and she has refused that, and then we'll certainly hear from her. In addition, Lynette offered that, all right, we will provide, the town will provide a doctor, which is not uncommon in the employment world to, again, the whole point is less about, okay, who's gonna hire the doctor, and more about, let's get an evaluation of whether or not there's a disability here in ADA terms, and without getting too complex, the ADA says the disability has to be a physical or mental impairment that substantially affects a major life activity. And that's not all that helpful, but it's kind of case by case basis and evaluated based upon, okay, what's the program that you're trying to access? So one of my other cities has a trail in a park. The question is, for disabled persons who use motorized vehicles, is an appropriate accommodation to allow those vehicles. But first you have to determine, is that person disabled? And we're at that point of the analysis. So having taken all that time, I can tell you my recommendation is you really need to get an outside opinion to the extent you can obtain one. And despite the fact that Selectman Powell said, no, I don't want to be examined by any doctor, I'm not going to allow that. She has the right to refuse that, she has, but that does not mean that the town cannot and should not, on its own, hire a doctor to evaluate what's at least been said and told, to give you information. You have that right. In fact, in my opinion, you have the obligation so that you can learn more. Whether Selectman Powell wishes to consult with that doctor or not, doesn't prevent you, and shouldn't, from your ability to get more information on this request. So the bottom line here is that I'm suggesting a motion that you direct the town administrator to engage a medical professional to make that evaluation and provide it to you. It's at that point that you can determine, and that will assist you in determining, is there a disability that is one that triggers the ADA? And if so, we shift to the second inquiry, which is what would be a reasonable accommodation. So for tonight, I'm recommending that you adopt the motion that's in my memo that asks you direct the administrator to engage a medical professional. Have to answer questions.
Should we hear from?
Sure.
Yes, Deanne.
Okay, the first thing is on the memorandum that's behind the first page. It says, 1, she's not comfortable in public meetings, and 2, she believes she's subject to becoming ill. Number 2 should be 1, and I am very comfortable in public meetings until about 2 years ago, when she believes to be subject to becoming ill if she attends in person. So the information's being presented biasedly. I do not want to come and sit in a room with a lot of people because I catch whatever's going around at the time. And that's what I said before, but this memorandum is very inaccurate. And if you're going to go to some medical professional with inaccurate information, you're going to come up with an inaccurate end result. It doesn't define what medical professional is. I don't see any need to go to a doctor because, as I've said before, my word was good enough to take the oath of office. My word is good enough to vote on all the things we deal with. Therefore, my assessment of my own physical health should be just fine to use. I will not go through any kind of procedure that declares me disabled. That's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with the reality of what's going on. We're still dealing with post-COVID things, and this falls in that category, not in disabled. So, what is this medical pro you're going to present this faulty information in front of?
Well, we'll see who the town can hire. But I will tell you this. under the ADA, it is in fact the employer that gets to decide whether to hire a professional, and under the ADA, while the opinion of the individual is relevant, no question, that isn't the ultimate deciding factor whether or not there's a disability such that the government has to either accommodate or not. I've seen it both ways, where you have the individual saying, I'm not disabled, but the government has an obligation to consider whether that is or is not true. And I've seen more often the statement, I am disabled, here's why, and here's what the limitations need to be, here's the program you need to change to allow me to continue to participate. And it's that disability that the government has, I see your hand, the government has the obligation to inquire into. And I will also say that if a professional is hired, I take seriously your point that, you know, Jerry, you've got it wrong in the memo. All I'm putting down in the memo is what I've heard said by you in the meetings, but I won't rely on my own memory. And we'll make sure, because the only evidence that professional will have, if you are not going to allow the person to examine you, will be the statements you've made on the record, and we'll make sure all of those are available. So that person doesn't have to rely on my interpretation of what you said. They'll just be given the recording so that they can see them all and evaluate them. Just that way, they've got your words and no one else's, and that's fine.
Prior to my putting my paperwork in to become a Board of Selectmen member, I did all sorts of research, whatever I could, to decide to find what was required of a selectman and to decide if I could qualify for that, if I could do the job very well. Because everything that was written down at that time that I agreed to, I have complied with completely and have been more than, well, I've been an excellent Board of Select member. That you want to change those requirements. I would suggest that anytime someone new is coming in, they be handed, if not a list, maybe a little handbook that says, this is expected of Board of Selectmen. This is the, you know, the requirements and all. I have complied with everything that was written prior to the August meeting where the board changed things. I feel that because of that, it was sort of a contract. It's pretty much a contract. And I came in with those details agreed to, and now the board's wanting to change them. Therefore, my situation should be grandfathered in, and then you can leave the changes on the books for the next routine.
Well, it's obviously up to the board on the motion. I will say that most city councils have rules of procedure at various levels, and they adjust those regularly. Sometimes they adjust them before election time, but usually it's in the middle of a term. Sometimes the rules of procedure, which are mostly all about, okay, how are we going to run our meetings? Who gets to talk first and second? Do we go around the room in order when hands get raised? Do we raise hands? Do we not? Who gets the attention of the chair? You know, that kind of thing. Those rules are in every city, and they get, you know, adjusted regularly. So the board, no question, has the ability to adopt the rules, has the ability to amend them mid-term. I get it, and I absolutely agree that new elected officials ought to be given and should be. Here's the stuff we have today. Here are our rules. Here's a copy of the blue book. You know, here's the other main things. Here's the budget. You know, but that can't mean that you can't change those rules during the term. That's within the power of the board. Other questions from the board?
I can
Okay,
appreciate,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think we discussed this plenty. Yeah, I'm in favor. If a doctor says that you're that sick that you can't come out, that's fine. But now I'm leaning more towards, now you feel you're more privileged than us because we all put ourselves in the way of being sick. We could get sick. So I mean, are you more special than us? We're all equal on this board. I drive here from Ward 2 to here. I'm the good neighbor. When my neighbors want to come and see me face to face, it's what I feel like they elected me for. That's all I gotta say.
I can appreciate wanting to dot the i's and cross the t's, but I don't think there's any more information available to us or any medical professional or any other professional that we're not aware of here. And unfortunately, Dan, if you're not going to be cooperative in seeking out a medical professional's opinion on your own, kind of see we're wasting our money to do it. I can't see that there's going to be any other answer. And then that to me, is that a delay tactic? Or are we turning around and saying, until we get that opinion, your Zoom attendance is suspended?
Can I address that?
Sure.
I'll tell you one thing that I'm gonna recommend is, until the board has whatever information it can develop, I think two things. First, while I get it that whatever information a professional can develop may be limited, just by virtue of the information they're gonna have to deal with is limited, you highly recommend that you have that. In all the case law of the ADA, it is really important that the local government and the government have, taken all the steps available to it to evaluate whether or not there's a right under the ADA. And where you get in trouble is not taking that time and then denying the right under the ADA. That's really the case. So the money spent there is a really good investment. Number one. Number two, and it's not in the memo, but I am going to request that kind of as a part of the ADA analysis, while you're evaluating whether someone is disabled and needs or does not need an accommodation, it's recommended to make a temporary accommodation. And for that reason, you can see where I'm headed. I'm going to recommend that the board take a second motion to waive the in-person requirement for Selectman Powell while you're doing this evaluation. Like you put requirements in advance while you're doing evaluations for other purposes. That again, and I'll be very clear about it, is to make your ADA defense case nice and clean. And what I don't want is to have that interfering with whatever ultimate decision the board makes, which means, an accommodation that might be quite temporary, but it is one I'm going to recommend because I try to keep my eye on the big picture. That's my job for you, and that will be a second recommendation. I'm glad you asked the question because it gave me a chance to tell you what I was going to be recommending.
See, we work well together.
In answer to Mary's statement, the situation that I'm in, I am healthy enough to deal with all kinds of things, everyday life, all of that. If I go into a crowd, I end up catching something 4 times out of 5. Once in a great while, it doesn't affect me, but mostly it does. And then I'm sick for a couple weeks. There is no way that I can go to a doctor whether I'm fully exhibiting being sick, because then they can only treat that immediate illness, or whether I go in and if I tell them this has been going on for 2.5 years, it's the same statement I've made to you guys. It's a waste of money to go to a doctor to have them say, we never saw you before. How the heck are we going to know?
Well, you have to work with the information we have here. Sometimes it's more limited than we'd like.
Do we have a reasonable date that we would be considering?
What?
I think that's gonna be driven by who we can get, but we'll get busy right away. It may be a couple of weeks at least before we can, the only good thing I suppose is there's limited material to review. So it's basically statements on the record.
Telehealth,
Pardon?
like telehealth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that professional, but, we'll act, if you pass the motion, we'll certainly act as quickly as we can. I can get recommendations, from my, just from my network to see, what others have been able to do in terms of hiring professionals to evaluate these kind of claims.
Well, I think it's fair enough for kind of what we did last time, is we probably should have gotten to this quicker, with this idea, but I'll make that motion. I move to direct the town administrator to engage a medical professional to advise the board of selectmen on policy requests.
And also suspend the.
You want a separate motion?
Yeah, let's make that a separate motion, to keep it simple. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to direct the town administrator to engage a medical professional to advise the board on Selectman Powell's request. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm very opposed. It's a total waste of money and time.
Okay,
I ask you for a second motion to waive the in-person meeting attendance rule for Selectman Powell only so long as necessary to evaluate the medical professional's report. So moved.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Next we have a presentation, by Amy Sexton on the multi-jurisdictional housing authority.
I should have come.
Yeah, you're welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
Is there a place to stand or sit or something, or?
Make yourself comfortable if possible.
I,
We have another chair you can play.
I'll sit in the car.
As long as the owl and your.
Okay, very good. And, there may be a Willa Williford in the waiting room.
There is.
She is also gonna present today. And so we'll let her join, but, hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you. Obviously, this has been a lengthy meeting so far, so we will be as efficient as possible. I'll introduce myself. I know some of you, but most of you I don't know. My name is Amy Saxton. I work for Clear Creek County. I am the director of the Strategic and Community Planning Division. That's a bit of a mouthful. That group includes the Planning and Building Department, the Housing Department, Recreation and Open Space, and I also represent the county on issues related to I-7. So I'm here today to talk to you about a project that we've been working on related to housing, which is a little apropos for tonight. It's a project that we'd like Georgetown to be a part of regarding a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. I don't know if you read my memo, it was in your packet. And Rick's been participating in this, Lynette has been participating in this as well. And it is a project that's been, so we'll look at this, we have a lovely slideshow here. This project is called A Clear Path Home, and you can go to the next slide, Willa. Willa's gonna drive the slideshow. We're gonna talk about a few things tonight. We're gonna give a quick overview of the project. I'm gonna share a very lovely video that's uplifting and happy. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about what a multi-jurisdictional housing authority actually is, how it works, and then talk about why and what Georgetown can gain from benefiting from joining, what the benefits would be, what it will cost to join, and we'll talk a little bit about then where we would go from there. So this is just to give you an overview of how and why to join. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So, like I said, this is a grant-funded project. We're calling it A Clear Path Home. It's a multi-strategy project. It has three main parts. It is, Clear Creek County and Idaho Springs applied for a grant, that we got from DOLA. We're partners in that, and then we've been working closely with Empire, Silver Plume, and Georgetown on this project. So this, the housing is a fraught topic, as I think was demonstrated a little bit here tonight. But that's part of the name of this project, is this idea of really finding a way to put people in homes and work together on it and get some clarity on how to do that. And so Clear Path Home, we really want to get people into homes, help improve the quality of their homes, and expand access to affordable housing in the county. And that's what this project is about. There's three parts, and we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about that. So we have three projects that was funded by this grant. Well, the first one is a broad public engagement and public education project. The second one is to do a broad zoning code review. And so that means we're looking at the zoning codes in all 5 of the public entities. That's the county and the 4 towns. And we're looking at those zoning codes to say, how well do they support each entity's goals? Are they aligned? Are they friendly to affordable housing developers? And then the third project is the one we're going to talk about tonight, which is the feasibility of forming a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. And it's really important that this is a 3-pronged project. A stool has 3 legs, it's stable, and the projects really relate to each other and help support each other. Next slide. It's also important to know that this is a community-informed project. We have had a stakeholder group. It's called the Project Advisory Team Housing, PATH. That's good, right? And so that group has a broad representation of all of the different towns. We have the school district, the rec district, the economic development councils on there. And so really trying to make sure we have broad representation to talk about how we do all 3 of these projects. Next slide. This project timeline slide might be a little hard to read, but basically this is showing that we've been involved in this project since April of earlier this year, taking steps, meeting with the community, trying to get each step involved, the community involved in each step along the way. And next slide. Our project team has different consultants on it. We're going to keep moving here. And oh, yeah, now we're going to show the video. Lola, you're going to be able to do this, you think? Yay. Hi, Lola.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you all. And let me get our video going.
Do we get popcorn?
I wish I had brought popcorn. Popcorn would be definitely.
Or coffee?
Yeah.
Housing up here is really hard to find. I know people working 2 to 3 jobs, single parents, trying to recruit any potential employee. It's always the housing, affordable housing.
And I have seen it grow to the point where many residents are having to give up 50% of their paychecks just to keep a roof over their head. It's not very equitable when you can work in our community and not live here in our community. It's just wrong on so many different levels.
The affordability aspect of living in Clear Creek has become an issue with us. We've had 8 management companies in 6 years, 3 management companies in the last 8 months. Most of them just come in and give us a rent increase.
It's very hard for employees to find a place to live. Oftentimes there will be roommate situations in motels, cramming into these small spaces because rent is very high here.
people really need to join together and start speaking out and standing up for their rights. My rent went up $300 at one time. They expect you to work for minimum wage, but then they want to charge you top dollar to be here.
I realize tourists are needed. I understand that aspect. But who do you think serves these tourists? Who do you think pours their beer? Who do you think runs their rafting trips? People live up here. We have to survive. And if you force us out, where are you going to get your workforce from?
I grew up in a community where it was possible that if you worked here, you could live here, and you could live well here. I don't think that's true for a lot of families that are really working hard and really struggling. And we need to make it true again, and we can.
We've recently received a grant from the state. That grant is supposed to help fund an effort so that we can find an actionable housing program for the people in the county so that everyone has an opportunity to housing. We call it a clear path home. And the idea behind it is that we want to find a clear path to a home for everyone. In addition, sometimes there's resistance to what people are concerned about, what this housing is going to be like. And so what we do want to know is what people do want. What do they say yes to? What do people really want to see happen in their communities? What fits so that we can design around that?
I have never seen such a cooperative environment on a given subject as right now on affordable housing. And I am talking about cities, counties, and the state all working in the same direction for the same goal.
We want to take a close look at our zoning regs in each of the jurisdictions and figure out if there's things that can be changed, what could those be? Each of us have our challenges with that because each town and the county itself have a different flavor. The other thing that we want to do is to look at, is it feasible to create a multi-jurisdictional housing authority? It pools resources, whether it's funding or energy. Realistically, if you get affordable housing anywhere in the county, it benefits all of us.
Take a look around you, go explore our towns, the recreation outside of them. This place is beautiful. Go up to the top of Guanella Pass at night, look up. There's no place that I would rather be. This is the place that is my home.
We're not asking a lot. All we want to do is just survive, you know?
This is our moment, this is our time to capture these resources, these tax dollars that are our tax dollars at the state and federal level, and bring them home to bear on this issue, so that we can once again build the kind of community that families can thrive in.
So that is our video, and that's sort of a cornerstone of the public education campaign that we're doing, and really the core message that we're trying to send and motivate all of you, our community, our residents, to understand the opportunity that we have here to work together to try to start coming together on this topic. So this you saw the placards that people were holding and the message that people were talking about, this I Say Yes thing, this idea about having a positive spin on the topic so we can talk about it positively together. So that we have a fair amount of support and portion of the project that's dedicated to this campaign and this portion of it. And I think that's going to be really important in forming this multi-jurisdictional housing authority. So it has momentum, it has support from residents, and that's going to be part of why it will be successful. The rubber meets the road a little bit and how much it's going to cost, what exactly the multi-jurisdictional housing authority is going to do, where will the money come from, how will it make money? All of those questions are also highly relevant. And Willa Williford is our lead consultant on this and has tons of history on that. So she's going to introduce herself and walk us through some of the details about MJHA. And if we have time to answer questions, we'd love to talk about that as well. Handing it to you, Willa.
Thank you, Amy. And good night or good evening, everybody. It's great to see you. As Amy mentioned, I'm Willa Williford. I'm based in the Gunnison Valley. I've been involved in workforce and affordable housing and housing authorities, both local and regional, for about 22 years. And I had the great fortune of working with the county on their housing action plan last year, and then being able to put together a team to do the Clear Path homework this year. And so, you know, I will sort of quickly take you through the work that's been done specific to the multi-jurisdictional housing authority, and really we're hoping to get your feedback and reactions tonight so that we can come back to you with a draft intergovernmental agreement at a future meeting, so that you can act on that and that it reflects your input on the work so far. So as Amy mentioned, you know, it's the power of in small and rural communities, which is where I focus my entire consulting practice. We don't have the resources to have each town have its own housing expert. But when we can pool our resources regionally and hire that expertise, we can help to rise the tide for all the communities, and also be much more competitive in drawing in outside resources. So the work has been guided by a representative from each of the jurisdictions, and we've had 4 meetings to kind of get us to where we are tonight and what we're showing you. I wanted to acknowledge that Sam McCloskey has resigned from Silver Plume, but we have a new representative who will be starting at the next meeting, and Sam provided a lot of helpful feedback. So the components that we're working on in this scope include the intergovernmental agreement that I referred to, which is based in state statute. That's how you form a regional housing authority. It's more than one government agreeing to work together. And in this case, we hope it's all of the municipalities with it and the county. Then, the core components that are included in the IGA are, how is the board structured? What is the purpose in the programs that this particular housing entity wants to do? Which powers under state statute is it utilizing? And then some initial thoughts on revenue, because you're going to want to make agreements between the governments about how you're funding it. And then outside of the IGA are really the tools and the processes that are more your operations and your organizational documents that you work from. So we're working on all of these elements. We sort of completed. We looked at peers across the state to inform, what might work best for Clear Creek. The working group narrowed those down and gave us direction. They prioritized the powers, which we'll talk about in a couple slides, that they want this MJHA to focus on. And right now we're really working through, what are the elements of the IGA, tools and processes, purpose and programs, with a heavy focus on our budget, revenue, and, how would we measure success? So Amy, would you like to speak about this slide a little bit? This is really the nitty-gritty of our purpose and powers.
Sure, thanks. So, really what the MJHA is going to do is really a key thing. And we have narrowed it down to these 3 main areas. One is just generally advancing affordable housing. And these are 4 types of activities that might be included. We really have not said it will definitely be these things or that thing, because that's a little too prescriptive at this point. But advancing affordable housing looks like things like converting property by a renovation, because there's a whole area of programming where you can, by increasing the value of a home, you can make it qualify as affordable, because if you get free money to convert it to increase the value, but there's still a lower debt on it, then it can be construed as affordable in the eyes of the state, and then so you can like do a whole program to add more affordable housing. So if somebody has a higher value property that they're paying less for, which in the eyes of the state can be construed as affordable, so then the state thinks that we have more affordable housing. It's not a trick, you know, it's just another version of affordable housing. So that's one program that the MJHA could assist to connect residents to. A buy-down program is another one, doing things like deed restrictions to preserve affordability and actually developing new affordable property. Those are all things that could advance affordable housing in the county. And there's more on that list, right? But that's a snapshot. But that's one section of projects that the MJHA could be involved in. And then providing resident services is a whole other area of work that the MJHA should probably do, that's our recommendation. Resident services is like rental assistance, helping people gain access to the weatherization resources that are out there, tenant advocacy, you know, helping to deal with tenant and landlord disputes, helping to resolve those. Section 8 vouchers right now, the county housing authority does not have the right status to provide Section 8 vouchers, but an MJHA likely would. So we would be able to provide those directly. Right now, the county hires that service out for Grand County. We wouldn't do, like the MJHA could do that instead. But resident services is also something that is a needed tool here. And then a lot of housing authorities, more innovative counties do things like come up with some sort of line of revenue. And one of the ideas that we've been talking about would be to potentially provide property management as a revenue source. So we would provide property management services, and it would be voluntary, you know, it would be like a retail service. You know, we would offer property management services to landlords, to the mobile home parks, to developers who provided affordable housing. We could even provide it to short-term rental owners. It could be a line of business. It could provide some jobs, and it would be what I like about that idea is that it also is like a liaison service. You know, it would also provide connect landlords to residents and could help improve some of the relationships there. It might be a little bit of a challenge, you know, but I think it could actually be positive, right? It could dovetail with resident services in a maybe kind of crazy way, but, you know, in a good way. You know, it might be a little bit more than we bargained for, but that's okay, because that's the task at hand, right? To provide services and to improve relationships for housing. But having some sort of revenue generating line of business for the multi-jurisdictional housing authority is the main point here. Thanks, Will.
Thank you. So in diving into the details about budget, we modeled a bunch of different ways we could go about setting up an initial year budget, or initial, you know, couple of years of budget. And the version that the working group really preferred was that we try to hire an executive director. We recognize that's a well-paid position. You have to kind of compete with the private sector and some bigger metro areas to some extent to get a really qualified person here. It's also great to get someone who knows your community well, if possible. But then there'd be some sort of initial startup costs, and then, you know, over time, but then fairly stable operations. And then, you know, of course, the how do we pay for it side of things is, you know, is incredibly important. And part of what we're here to ask you about is the potential of Georgetown participating financially. So we also modeled this in several ways and didn't come to quite as clear an outcome. I think there's still some flex between these different models. But we looked at just, you know, there's quite a wide variety from the different communities around their ability to pay, but the power of everyone making a financial contribution was something that the group really agreed on the importance of. We also were looking at this this idea that, and this is common among other multi-jurisdictional housing authorities, that initially the funds are seeded by local government to get it off the ground, but that over time these sort of enterprises and revenue streams, like what Amy was talking about with property management or development partnerships or providing different kinds of services, grant money coming in, et cetera, start to make it more self-sustaining and more funded from sources that are outside of the local government. So, our thinking, and we this is just a for instance, but that over time, the contributions from local government could come down as these other sources grow. And this is actually a pretty, I would say this is a pessimistic model in terms of asking for quite a bit from local government for the first 5 years. We already, between Jonathan Kane and Amy, who have been co-leads of this project overall, they've already identified some potential grant sources that could come into play as early as the first year. So we wanted to keep our to go for those other sources, but kind of plan for the worst, just so that.
Well, I'll jump in here too, just for a quick second. I think, just from a couple of other things to point out, like I would just say, one thing that we would try to avoid is the idea of like renegotiating the budget every single year and try to find some stable approach. And that also depends on what we hear from everybody as we go along, right? If people are like, well, we're okay contributing this year, but we don't want it to be a long-term commitment. Well, if that's the case, then, that's good to know. From the county's perspective, we know that like lodging tax revenue is a restricted source of revenue that we will only be able to use for housing and childcare. So we know that we have a restricted bucket of money that we probably would be okay to make a commitment to a stable commitment over time. So that would be like a way to look at this. Because even if we got grant money, even if the MJHA had grant money to offset, it might make sense for partners to continue to make a consistent contribution every year and just plan on it to build up a fund balance for the MJHA over time. So that was, that was for stability grant matches, to be able to consider a match for a development project or something like that. But there is a pathway to, to not having a consistent long-term financial commitment as well. And I think that's important to understand.
Thanks, Amy. So do you want to kind of continue on this slide with the, community-specific benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other things is like just some of the things that you guys were just talking about with the challenges with sorting out a housing project. There's an option to just kick that whole thing over to an MJJ, that potentially, like that might be something that scares you, or it might be something that relieves you. I have no idea, but just, you can put that in your pipe and smoke it, like, I don't know how you feel about that, but that is one thing to think about with, if there's an MJHA that you are participating in, your relationship to a project like Bighorn could be different. It could be as you wanted it to be, but it could have a different size and scale, and that's an option. That could be worth a contribution, that could be worth being involved in it, and maybe that's worth a few $100,000. No, I'm just kidding. But certainly not worth that. But it might be worth some part of your budget. It might be worth a part of the restricted lodging taxes or something, that it might be worth it. But there's other things like assisting with code enforcement, holding trainings and being able to provide resources, and just having, as Lynette pointed out in the video, just having pooled resources and gaining some value for that.
Yeah, and I think that, another thing that could be pivotal here potentially is to have that expertise around creating public-private partnerships that are going to work in the local context of your community. So, you know, the Housing Authority staff really acting as a liaison and an advocate in that space to attract the kinds of development that you want that will serve locals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'd welcome, as we get into discussion, you know, your ideas around what are specific needs for Georgetown. Are there things you want to add to this list? And, you know, or things that maybe you're like, yeah, that doesn't, you don't need that. So we'll transition now to the question and answer portion of the agenda. And, you know, would love to just start with a general gut check on, you know, does this approach of creating a housing authority that can serve all the jurisdictions align with your community's needs and bring a benefit to you?
I think everybody knows my views on it, so go ahead.
Where's your sign? We all want a sign.
Any thoughts, questions?
You know, we support affordable housing. We've made some changes in our codes to, you know, earlier this year to kind of start the ball rolling with that. You know, the conversations that you were privy to, listening to my confrontational comments to Bighorn are not against the housing there. I don't believe that you cram somebody into a smaller apartment and charge the same rate fits the bill of affordable housing.
Absolutely.
And I think what we heard from them, where they're even, God knows where they're planning now after that. You know, where we heard that there's a potential reduction in some of the commercial pieces of the residences, you know, they were willing to reduce some of those. Gives us, you know, if we could make that into more of an affordable housing option, to, you know, for real, not just, you know, postage stamp size and charge whatever. My question is, since you're going into this with Idaho Springs and you guys are hand in hand, where does Georgetown fall if we're participants?
Everybody would be equal partners as joining the MJHA. It would be governed by a board that it would have nothing to do with how it was formed, right? This grant that Idaho Springs and the county happened to obtain would have nothing to do with how the board was formed, and that's what the IGA would establish. But the vision is that all of the entities that joined the IGA or joined the MJHA would be equal partners, even if they were, you know, Idaho Springs and Empire would have the same seat at the table. It would not change depending on what your contribution was or the size of your town. That's the initial vision. I mean, you know, that's what we're thinking, but that's open for discussion, and that would be part of the conversation about forming the IGA, you know. But that's what we're envisioning. So it wouldn't be like the county would have a big giant hammer or gavel or something.
I can chime in there too, because we've had a few conversations about the potential board composition, and the recommendation from the working group right now is a board that is 7 members. So it's 1 member from each of the participating jurisdictions. So those are equal votes, and then 2 members who are community members at large, ideally who have some expertise in real estate, property management, the sort of the business side of the MJHA.
So not that this really plays into, but your presentation brought this up, and you mentioned that Sam McCluskey has withdrawn from Silver Plume, and I noticed that you had Karen Kwambek and Sandy Schuessler representing, or not representing anyone in particular, but on that, and I know things have changed there, so I assume there's new players.
Yeah, we have not updated our membership just on the project team yet to who would represent the school district, but we don't have any vision for who would be the addition, who would be on the board going forward for the MJHA. The project is one thing, and then how we go forward with the MJHA is a totally separate thing.
And so what's your real timeline? I mean, you've got the dates out there, but, you know, studies, you know, we always hear studies, and I'm sorry. Our county is, you know,
Totally
studied
with
to
you.
death.
I'm so with you.
You know, so
No.
I would rather look at that executive director could be putting all this together type stuff.
Absolutely,
But
I'm a little idealistic probably, but the
We need
hope is that
positivity
we
tonight.
so we're going through, having all the meetings with the towns in the county. That'll be done, Silver Plume's the last one, it's gonna be December 11th. Hopefully, we would then use all of the feedback that we get at these meetings to draft an IGA that we would bring back to everybody January, February. Once we get an IGA signed, then we form a board, like immediately. We form the board and we form it, and then we publish an RFP. I publish a job description for an executive director, get someone hired. In my mind, by July 1, we have a person at a desk with an email address, and there the executive director of the MJHA is up and running. July 1, 2024.
But by the time we're providing the housing, which is our goal.
Well, I mean.
And I know I'm not asking for miracles, but you know, you've got to have something in your back pocket.
Absolutely. And I mean, one thing that's important to understand is, I mean, I think new housing is only a part of this, right? Resident services, all of these other things are also very important. Improving the quality of existing housing is also a very, very big need in the county, throughout the county. So all of those things need to be advanced. One other thing that's important to know is that for an MGHA to borrow money or finance a project, and you have to go to the voters. So we would expect that in my mind's eye, the MJHA would probably need to establish itself as a value-producing organization for a little bit of time before it could expect to go to the voters to, successfully get their approval for borrowing money or taking on debt. MJHA also has taxing authority, so would have the ability to seek some type of tax that we would, if the MJHA board decided to approve something like that, that would be something that would also need to have some hope of getting approved by the voters. So all of that would, is a little bit down the road. So it's not gonna be like new condos are popping up like mushrooms, for sure.
No, but we have property that we could,
But that's a big part, that's part of it, that's part of why working together and having the ability to be strategic and collectively pool resources. If somebody has land and somebody has time and resources, at least you can capitalize on those things and get alignment and get intersection between resources so that you don't miss opportunities and you can at least keep things moving forward. Anybody else? Thank you very much for your time on this very long meeting, and I appreciate your attention and good questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Willa.
Thank you, Willa.
Thank you both. Man, I've been hard board the whole time, and I've enjoyed it. It's been delight to see everyone collaborating, talking together, and so thank you again. Thank you for coming, John.
Oh, yeah.
Have a great night. Take care.
Thank you, you too. Okay, next we have staff items. We'll start off with the town administrator's report and task list. Any questions on that? Wanna emphasize anything?
I don't have anything to emphasize. It's gonna be a long night.
Okay.
Unless you have questions. Go ahead. I'm sure you read it and attested.
Tell us about the bridge. Tell us about the bridge.
That's a really unfortunate situation. So that was a few nights ago. And I got a call from our John and said, you need to get down here now. And he didn't give me anything except I need to get down there. So I got down there and of course you see what happens. A semi took the turn coming down 7th to make a turn directly coming by the bridge and wasn't able to make it. Ripped the whole entire guard off, the guardrail. And then as he was still moving, it hit the house that's right beside it, the garage house. And somebody was in the tenants were in the house. She was injured, and so she was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, we were not able to identify this truck. We had pieces and broken materials all over. We collected that as evidence. We were able to find from Cooper's, the restaurant, we were able to identify that it was a white semi and that there was damage on the rear of the semi. And we also identified that it went under the bridge towards the interstate, so we knew it was going westbound. And so when they asked for video evidence and so forth, at the tunnel, they did not have a semi come to the tunnel. So it must have pulled off somewhere.
Or one they pulled out of the creek at Silver Plains. Was white.
I don't know, I didn't hear about that one.
You didn't? It's still parked there.
Okay.
Well, that's good. Well, look at that.
Get Randy back there.
So anyways, it has not been identified. They've not found any more evidence of where it is. We do see from the video that there is an emblem on the side of it, but the video was not able to kind of identify what that logo is. And so Randy is most likely turning into CBI to see if they have types of software that can identify the logo better. And so, and we've kind of also went through trying to find other video evidence through other homes and so forth, and we've never been able to find anything else.
I know Amanda was trying to watch earlier in the day to see if you could see the truck coming in and maybe, markings on the other side, so.
Yeah.
How about the pieces that you found? Are there any serial numbers on the pieces that you can track?
No, it's just busted lights and things like that. But we did collect all the material, ready to, if we find a truck that matches it, I mean, they kind of know exactly what parts of that is coming off the truck, so they know, and they sent out, I don't know what you call it, but notified all the agencies. Yeah. They sent so all the stopping points or waypoints, they've sent all that out to be on the lookout. We haven't heard anything since. So that's that. I guess quick updates to Excel. This is just, they called and said that the project was finally upgraded. And you're like, what does that mean? Upgraded to the Argentine North project for the power lines? Well, what that meant is we're gonna have a meeting to determine which poles they were gonna remove and bury the lines. So we had a big meeting with Comcast, CenturyLink, and Excel, and they have different divisions of Excel because, they're huge. Unfortunately, the gas people don't speak to the electric side, so the gas people were not there. However, we've been talking to them, so we kind of had to do that SUE study, if you remember that, where it does the imaging to make sure exactly where it's in the depth of where it is. So when we put our concrete footers for the light poles, they would not be in, conflict. But anyways, they weren't there. What they have determined at this point is the berm was in the way. So we had, Kirk came up and he did move the berm. So we moved it 15 feet over to the east. After spending a few hours out there in the cold, the Excel is gonna put it on the west side of the road now. So our easement on the west side is much bigger. It's a 30 feet easement on that side. And Comcast and CenturyLink has to be at least 8 feet away from where they bury, from where Excel buries. So we have plenty of room on that side. If not, we really only had about 4 feet, 5 feet of playing range, because we have a sidewalk, and so we were gonna have the right of way on one end, so that's been determined. And the approximate area that they're gonna bury the cable is from 22nd Street to, the 5 acre site. There are 3 poles that jut in, and that's where they're gonna stop. So not quite to the apartments, the white apartments, the existing, so it'll go to about that distance there. They're gonna start this winter, so that's gonna happen. It'll be way before the spring, so that'll be done. The other issue that we're having right now is, XL will bury the cables, they will leave the poles. Now, we want the poles moved because they're in the way of where we need our sidewalk to be in the light poles. So Comcast has 60 days to then move theirs. They have to move within 60 days. If not, then the poles become theirs. And so I'm like, that's not acceptable, because we want the poles removed. That's the whole reason why we request this, is to get the poles removed. Comcast knows that that is not what, it's our right of way, and we're revoking it, and we need you to move it. So they heard it, they're gonna fall in suit immediately after XL buries theirs. That's what they communicated. So that's that one. CDOT Gateway Visitor Center contract. Where we are on that one is, I finally was able to meet with, I can't remember her name. Hope Wright. I think it was a great conversation. She had not moved at all in the, willingness to negotiate. It was 75,000. After our discussion, she was able to move immediately to 86. And if we can prove our point of what the cost, the increase of inflation, there's a term, I forgot what it's called.
Consumer price index is what she was using, but inflation.
Yeah. If we can prove from the point of where it should have been increased every year as opposed to stayed stationary, then she's willing to move it. And so we've all been discussing behind the scenes. We have another meeting scheduled on the 21st at 1 o'clock, where she is willing to, if we can prove our case of what it should be, then her bottom number was 86 plus every year to increase because of inflation. So we know that and I told her flat out, I want to see at least 100,000. That's what it should be. And so we're going to be somewhere between 86 and 100 is where I suspect is we're going to come to an agreement.
Good job.
So, yeah, I mean, we did move,
No, that's
we
great.
moved the ball.
Yeah, nice.
So that's good. Strauss Park update. I don't have anything.
Well, yeah, you've got it, you've got
It's in the
Bob's
back.
report in your packet, so.
And Bob's on vacation, so I know he would have been here, live. And then,
But the good news is it should be ready and functional for the board.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the good news too is the last item to report is the DOLA contract approval to Gateway North project. That's $1 million project, $1 million+ project. And we were unanimous to receive that grant. So, I mean, special thanks to Cindy Neely. She's worked really hard. Craig and I did go out and do a presentation, and I knew some of the board members that were on that. And so it was nice. It was a nice one. So we were unanimous to get that. And then we also received the CDOT grant, Main Street revitalization for Strauss Park. So we received both of them, we've signed for both of them, and we're just going through the hoops of getting those monies in. So, big deal, and especially, I mean, Mary and everyone else who's been part of that, it was a collaborative effort, so.
So, that takes us through all of the things that are listed on the staff items. Anybody have any others? Obviously, we need to move our adjournment to after the executive session is when we would adjourn the regular meeting. So.
Well, I guess one other thing too, since we have Keisha, she is our new
Yes.
town, assistant town administrator.
Hello.
And she's been here, but do you have anything that you want to share with the board?
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited. Been having a lot of fun the first couple weeks. For you, I think the housing project that she mentioned is really cool. I have a background in housing, so
I'm excited about that.
Great. Thank you.
Well,
Just don't let him hire you as the executive director. Yeah, okay.
Dwayne's got the motion.
Yeah.
All right, I move to go into executive session under CRS 24-6-402 for a conference with county attorney, county administrator, and appropriate staff to receive a legal advice concerning pending litigation, capital prize mine, quiet title suit.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Okay.
5 minutes for comment.
Yeah, and then Deanne, I didn't set up a Zoom for the budget work session, so I can do that and send it to you after the executive session. Right?
Yeah. You're right, you didn't send me a link to it.
That's what I'm saying, I didn't make one, I didn't know what was going on, so I'll make one now and send it to you.
Awesome.
Wow.
Wonderful. Can you call me when you guys are done?
I will, certainly.
Okay, I'm gonna edit
Don't
this.
go very far.